Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
Hi.
This is our roundtable, Writing as a Tool for Social Change.
Good evening.
Welcome, everyone. We have 9 participants, and we even have more in the backstage.
Wow.
Wow. I'm looking forward to such an engaging and amazing roundtable. For everyone. So before we kick off the roundtable, let's have our authors quickly introduce themselves and their book. And let's start at the top left. I can see Carl and Shirley. Why don't you start off?
Hi, my name is Carl Jonoff, and my book, now it's really something trying to not mirror image. I don't want to hide my wife. Anyway, my book is Badge 411. It contains some 80-odd stories of my experiences as a probation officer. I'm a retired probation officer. I specialized in juvenile. My pen name is Kurt Niemann. It's Kurtniemann, and it's that way because a close friend of mine, when I was a very young child and we had hard times, my close friend's name was Kurt. So this is in his memory. This is my wife, the long-suffering and very patient Shirley, and she's the one that convinced me that I ought to write this book, and she's the one that actually typed it up for me. She's just involved at least as much as I am. Anyway, I did.
No, you're just supposed to.
Oh, just okay.
4 cents.
Amazing. Thank you, Carl and Shirley. Welcome to the roundtable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Let's go with Linda Crosby. Introduce yourself and your book, please.
No. Hey, y'all. My name is Linda Crosby, and the title of my book is The Day My Life Changed, an Accident Survivor. It is about a horrific accident that I was involved in that nearly took my life and left me with disabilities. And this is my husband, Roy. Bring your head down so they can see.
Hello.
And he will be my hands for today because I have bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome, which is permanent nerve damage to both of my hands. And he's always right here by my side.
Thank you, Linda and Roy. Yes, we can see your book. We're looking forward to what you have to say in today's roundtable session. And next up, we have Sue.
Hi, my name is Sue Matinka, and I write science books for children. I wrote Plant a Tree and Watch It Grow. It talks about what importance the trees have to our lives. And the one that I'm going to talk about the most during this is Splish Splash Water. That's my newest one, and they are in words that children should understand, and there's some things that get them involved in our environment.
Perfect. Thank you, Sue.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Crystal.
Hi, everybody. My name is Crystal, and I am the author of my first and debut book, From Meaningless to Purposeful. And From Meaningless to Purposeful is a book that I wrote about a significant period in my life where coming into a relationship with Jesus Christ changed my life from meaningless to purposeful. And through the trials and the struggles and things that I endured in every aspect of my life, how I managed to continue dreaming and being creative.
Perfect. Thank you, Crystal. Next up, we have Carmen. Sorry, real quickly, you're muted.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Perfect.
There you go. Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen Davenport, and I am the author of Your Warrior Stance. And I am actually a retired Marine. I served 25 years. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Years in the Marine Corps, retired in 2015, and have 3 deployments under my belt as well. So right now I am considered a combat veteran, and of course with the best branch that there is. So my book has a lot of information based on my life prior to the military, as well as what I've dealt with in the military. But this book here, Your Warrior Stance, is a workbook. And it's a workbook about getting, helping you to gain strength, helping you to build your confidence. There's 13 principles in here. It's actually called Your Warrior Stance, Releasing the Warrior in You, because we all have that warrior. We all have that fighter. We've all been through life and we have to fight, right? So this here will help build that confidence that you need and the strength that you need to endure, whether it's things that you're dealing with within your family life or things you're dealing with within your work life. There's affirmations in here. There's assignments in here. And trust me, you have no choice but to grow if you read this book. So that's me.
Thank you, Carmen. And now we've got Reverend Michael.
Yes, I'm Reverend Michael Lavery, and my book is Lucius, A Soldier's Journey. It's about a Roman soldier who's seeking truth. And it talks about many of the things we'll probably talk about today. It talks about slavery, the horrors of slavery, mistreatment of subjugated people and conquered people. And Lucius is seeking truth that he's not sure can be found in anything the Roman Empire has. And he finds that truth ultimately in the one he calls the teacher, who is the Lord Jesus Christ himself.
Nice. Thank you, Reverend Michael. Next up, we've got Deacon Tanya. Tanya?
Hi, everybody. I was here yesterday. It was great. Awesome. Great to be here with you, Caitlin. I just want to let you know that I actually have written 4 books, and I'm writing my 5th one now. And because I have this one with me, I'll tell you about it. This is called Found in a Garbage Can, Generation X to Generation Next, The End of the Godless Age. I wrote this book. It was really a challenge of writing a book in 30 days. And that's what it started out to be. But what it turned out to be was a message that I didn't know I even had inside me. And it's about my life, and from being there with my mom, who used to say I was found in a garbage can, This is where I got that part from. And, we'd go back and forth. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. All that kind of stuff. But the purpose of the book turned out to be the waywardness that I had after being a child and getting back to God in the end.
Perfect. Thank you, Deacon Tanya. Now we've got Leroy.
I'm the
Sorry,
author.
you're muted. Oh, there we go. Go.
I'm good. Okay.
Perfect.
Leroy Cassette, author of American Insanity. And just to let Carmen know, you've got two other Marines here with you. American Insanity is just exactly what it says. I write about the insanity within our government, with all the corruption and ineptness that we find throughout the government. Write about the insanity going on within our young generations, with all the killings of each other and the drugs and all the problems they're having trying to survive. And I talk about insanity, the insanity of our society in general. So there's a lot. I talk about a lot of corruption because, unfortunately, there's a lot of corruption to be talking about. And I talk about how and why that is occurring. And I use my 11 years experience working with the Congress and the White House staff in Washington. That's where I learned a whole lot about our elected officials and our bureaucracy and how all that has functions. So that's what that's all about.
This is the perfect roundtable for you then, Leroy. Yeah. Last but definitely not the least, we have Marcelo. Hello, Marcelo.
Everybody, thank you so much for having me. My name is J. Marcelo Vaquero Alvarez, and I go by BZ because Vaquero Alvarez just 14 letters and just a mouthful. So Marcelo BZ, or if you want to call Marcelo, it's all good. I am the author of two current books. The first one is called Authoritarianism and Propaganda, the Puppet Master Tools. And this is a non-fiction, thought-provoking book that actually brings us to understand propaganda from the Bolshevik Revolution all the way up to the 90s, give or take around the time from Pinochet, to see how the geopolitical purpose for propagandists has been hijacking people throughout that time. And the second book, it is a little bit more provocative in the title, so it's not that I'm for or against the word, and I just want to make sure, that we said that. The second book is actually titled Woke and Proud, The Charlatan's Inconvenience. And this is supposed to be a historical recount, thought-provoking book that actually defines the term in a way for us to really understand if propaganda has actually been taking a foothold from our psyche, not just in the United States, but actually around the world. Like, for instance, some people don't actually realize that the woke word actually dates back to the Civil War. So we actually try to define that a little bit in a very pragmatic way. It's not a left or right part of the spectrum. It is very much to the middle. Both my books are actually talking about the person, really trying to get that introspection, pairing intellectual honesty with critical thinking. Critical thinking alone is not enough because a person with critical thinking can actually be bamboozled and be able to do something against their best interest, even if they're actually a good person. So that's actually what it talks, So he's actually trying to bring that introspection. So he's invited to bring that. A little bit about me, just so I can wrap it up. I'm active duty Navy for about 20 years. I'm going to be retiring very soon. So Semper Fi to everybody over there. I'm not as cool as you guys, but definitely respect and love you guys all the same. So every person has gotten the privilege to wear the nation's colors, that we have that bond that words cannot explain. And I'm super happy to see you guys here. I also own Half-Life Crisis. Right over there, where I write a whole bunch of thought-provoking long-form articles. Again, it's not partisan, not red, light or red, right or left. An authoritarian doesn't give a crap, which side you can go over there. It's just want to see if you can get bamboozled. And finally, I own a web development company called BC Vision. So just like me, so BC Vision, that's kind of like what I'm going to be transitioning after my 20 years in the Navy. So Thank you for this time.
All right, all right. That's amazing. We've got 9 people in this roundtable session. And my gosh, everyone has such diverse backgrounds, diverse books. We've got some fiction, we've got nonfiction, we've got things about changing your life, things about realization. And while all the books are so diverse, I think there is still common ground between your books. And I think that really comes from the message that you guys are trying to send out into the world. I think that's the number one feeling that I got from all of you, that you have a message and you have something that you want to share to the world, which is why I think this roundtable session is perfect for all of you. Writing as a tool for social change. Quick question. From the top of your head, when I say, what is a book that changed your life? Which book would you say? If anyone wants to raise their hand, and then we'll unmute you. Let's go, Crystal.
The honest truth is the Bible. The Bible is the book that changed my life. And although I've always been a believer in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ since I was a child, but it wasn't until 2018 when I began to read the Bible consistently that it began to renew my mind and change my heart and change the way I respond to things and receive things.
I think that's a good answer. Definitely. I think the Bible, like when you start reading it, it resonates with you somewhere. And for some people it might not be the Bible, for some people it might be other books, but like I absolutely agree that the Bible definitely just something in you clicks and something in you changes, right? And it's a social change. That's exactly why we're here. Does anyone else have a book they want to mention?
I agree
Yes,
with Crystal. The Bible, most definitely.
Thank you, Linda. Let's go,
Can you hear
Carl.
me? Okay.
Sorry, he's muted.
There you go.
Oh, there we are. On a smaller scale than the Bible, and everything else is on a smaller scale, I want to bring up a historian named Barbara Tuchman. Barbara has written a number of very excellent books. She's a Pulitzer Prize winner, and one of the books she wrote is called the March of Folly, and it's about her basic theory was that in any event, ranging from the siege of Troy to our involvement in Vietnam, incidentally, Carmen, Semper Fi. I was very early now. Anyway, reading that book brought a whole new edge to me. It brought a whole new awareness of how things happen. And she talks about America losing a lot of itself in the war in Nam. And I was there when President Kennedy said we were going to save the world from godless communism in Laos. And somehow or another, we didn't end up in Laos. So anyway, Barbara, I highly recommend any book in history by the author Barbara Tuchman.
Perfect. Thanks, Carl.
And also,
I
would like to say,
Linda?
Kobe Bryant's book, The Mama Mentality. That's a great book for anyone who wants to succeed in life.
Thank you, Linda. We also have Helen backstage, who said that the book that changed my life was The Life of Gandhi Copeland by Alice Walker. Thank you, Helen. Last, let's have Deacon Tanya speak about the book that changed her life.
I hope you guys don't laugh. But the book that actually changed my life, and it was more about changing how I thought about words and reading and writing, was called, I hope you guys remember this, it was called Where the Wild Things Are. It was a child's book. Oh gosh, that changed my life because I could read it. I learned how to read by that time. And I used to sit up at night and just keep reading it. It was fascinating how the little boy goes out with the monsters and how they take care of him and all that, and they make sure he gets back home to bed. And it was exciting for me. It was very exciting for me and changed the way that I viewed books. Yeah.
Thank you, Tanya. I think we have an amazing array of examples of amazing books, and it's different. So we had Kobe Bryant, we had books about history, books about perspective, but also books like Where the Wild Things Are, where it influences you as a child. And I think that's what's amazing about books, because the words, when the readers actually read the words, everyone perceives them in a different way, and the words touch people in different ways. But the way that it touches people is actually an avenue for change, for someone to realize and someone to go, wait a minute, you're right, or wait a minute, you're wrong. Everyone can perceive your words in different ways, but no matter what, the words have touched someone's life, and your words might be the driver for their change. So that's what this roundtable is about. We want to go through 10 different ways that writing can actually be used as a tool for social change. And I'm sure that some of you are already using some of these ways, because just the nature of your books, absolutely, I think these ways have already been included. But I think it's really nice to enumerate and to talk about some of these ways. Just because you've used it in your book doesn't mean you realize you're doing it. So it'll be good to go through it and go, oh, that's actually what I'm doing, and then continue to do that with the rest of your books. So we've got 10 ways, and I'll quickly read through them, and then we will discuss each one in detail. So 10 ways that authors can drive social change. 1 is to name things, to call things out. 2 is to frame things, to explain things in your perspective. 3 is to legitimize things, make sure that you actually have sources and things like that, less bias in your book. 4 is to document things. 5 is to redefine what is good for you. 6 is to make meaningful, visible choices. 7 is to hold attention and bring attention to what you're speaking about. 8 is to make content accessible. Tinda mentioned that she had a disability. And actually, 1 in 4 Americans have disabilities. And so making your books accessible is really important. 9 is we can amplify others. And 10 is we can mobilize. So those are the 10 ways that we can drive social change through writing, through books. And we'll go through them one by one. So number 1, we can name things. It's calling out things. I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but one of the number 1 conflict de-escalators is actually to call something out. When you're having a very heated discussion with someone and you actually call out, wait, I can see that you're getting heated. I can see that we're not getting anywhere. Let's take a 5-second break. Calling something out is actually very powerful. Can you think of an instance where you've called something out and went, wait, no, that's not right, and you've actually de-escalated a situation? Yes, Marcelo?
Definitely. Yeah. So, well, that is actually part of my job, actually, as an analyst. A lot of times we're going to be telling people that would be otherwise very convinced about a particular thing if their facts are actually facts or if they're opinions. So a fact has to be logical, measurable, and demonstrable. If it is not, then it's conjecture, and it can actually create a false narrative. So in my line of work is very important because we want to make sure that a person is not doing what we call chasing a shiny object and start to get into a wrong into a wrong rabbit hole, because it's very easy to do that, particularly if they get into an echo chamber. So just to wrap up that portion over there, in my community, for instance, we don't say, I don't really care about your opinion. I don't care about your, in this, not to be mean. I say, like, what is your opinion is irrelevant because that might not be factual. I care, what do you assess? Because your assessment is going to be logical, measurable, and demonstrable. And I'll be able to actually break it down. And if I'm wrong in some portions, awesome, because now I can actually see if I have a blind spot that I didn't see together. But if we actually just put it as an opinion, then at some point somebody would be able to exploit that for their own purpose, especially if a person has a visceral response. So without that, get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcelo. I think definitely, like when you call something out that, hey, wait, that's an opinion, give me some facts. I think it definitely makes people think about it and really question, what am I actually saying? I think that's really good. I saw Carmen had her hand raised as well.
You know, within my field, because once I retired from the Marine Corps, I was also an analyst, you know, for a little while. But once I retired, I became a certified life coach. And that's very important to help facilitate change in people, you know. So you have to call out some of the negative behaviors that they don't realize that they're actually, you know, contributing to their issues. So it's very important to analyze, you know, where a person is and where they're trying to go, and call out what that difference is. You know, what's the difference? Because the difference between where you are and where you're trying to go is actually what's causing the problem. So let's talk about this problem, but let's move forward. And, you know, sometimes you just have to identify what the problem is. Not sometimes, but, you know, all the time. You have to identify the problem in order to make that change. So, yeah, as a life coach here, we tend to have to do that very often and readjust some mindsets just so people could move from where they are to where they want to be. And that's, you know, you have to call them out on their behaviors and their mindset a lot. So.
Yes, definitely. Leroy? Yes, Leroy?
My 11 years in Washington, D.C., working with Congress, that's when I had to really work with people who really didn't want to listen or didn't want to have to change their positions. And I had to sit and convince them, bring the information necessary to convince them that they needed to change their positions on a piece of legislation, or convince them that they needed to sponsor legislation to benefit the veterans. And I can tell you, those individuals are very headstrong, and they have people behind them that have expectations. And so a lot of times they're afraid to move out of their safety zone and do what is right.
Nice. Yes, thank you, Leroy. I think it is really important to call things out. And I think I remember a philosopher actually saying that, is it actually possible to discuss or have an opinion on something that we can't actually name? Because when we name things and we call things out, it becomes a shared experience. And everyone can then go, oh, that's what we're talking about. So I think what Carmen actually said, like when you're trying to change, just identifying what you need to change in the first place is already so powerful. I will say sorry in advance. I might not be able to call everyone out for every single step, just because there's so many of us. But definitely for the next ones, I will be calling out different people. So keep your hands raised, and definitely the next one, it'll be you. So the second way that authors can drive social change is actually by framing things. I think we all have our own perspective, and we live our own experiences. And writing that out, like the way to frame things, is really, really important, because then it shows your experience. But it also, our word selection is so important. For example, the number one thing I can think of is, instead of saying things like, oh, I'm blind to this social issue, I would actually say, well, I'm ignorant to this social issue. So the way that you kind of frame how you say things is so important. Can you give us an example in your book of how you framed something? Yes, Carl. Sorry, you're still muted.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay, I think my whole book is just about that kind of thing. It's not what you say; it's how you say what you say. And for somebody like a probation officer, a police officer, corrections officer, any kind of law enforcement officer, that is absolutely paramount. It's how you say and how you do what you do. It's a difficult thing to learn for a lot of us, including me, but it's something I had to learn. So that my last 6 years as a probation officer, I was the chief operator of the Arizona's the first state juvenile detention officer program academy.
And he wrote that. He wrote that.
I wrote that. Yeah, my big mouth got me into it. That's the way my life has been. But yeah, teaching people to not just say, "Oh man, you're just full of it," or "Hey, what a load of crap," or whatever, because that's just going to accelerate what you don't want to see happen. It's how you say what you say, and you want to get it right the first time.
I totally agree. And I think all the authors here can agree. Like, just choosing your words is really hard, you know, making sure
Yeah.
you use the right language, the right word to really convey what you feel. Deacon Tanya, and after Deacon Tanya, I think we have to go on a quick ad break. But go ahead, Deacon Tanya.
Okay. It's funny how you talk about framing words. What kept coming to my mind was about the courage it takes to do that. The courage. It takes a lot of courage to come out and say, this is this. Call a spade a spade. It's really hard. I think about what I've written in my book, and I think about the things that I wrote about Jesus, like or one of his disciples who say things like, everything we need for life and godliness is here. And they know it, they believe it, they're going to teach it. But it takes courage to come out and say that and to know for it to be true. Same thing as one more thing I'll say. Watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. It's bold. It takes much courage to say, this is what's going to happen if you do this, or that is what's going to happen if you do that. I tend to want to make sure that, especially my young listeners, hear that out loud so that they don't hear something different or something. So they know that a spade is being called a spade. So they know that the truth is coming to them as the truth.
Thank you, Deacon Tanya. I think we'll go on a quick ad break. So I'll wait for Alexis to bring that up. But I think it is so important, the words that we use to really convey our message, because the tone can also change your message, you know? If you're, like what Deacon Tanya said, if you're being not forceful, but if you're calling things out and being brave about the things that you're calling out, or if you're like Carl, who is actually framing and the way that you use the words in your book as well really just changes the whole experience for the reader. So I think framing things is very important. Word choice is very important, especially when you're trying to create change and when you're trying to convey a message. All right, let's go on for a quick ad break. I think we've got 30 seconds to a minute. I'll see you after the ad break.
Roll.
Hello, everyone, and we're back. All right.
Hey.
So just before we went on the break, we covered 2 ways that you can drive social change. So you can name things and you can frame things. The third one is you can legitimize things. So think about who you quote, who you cite, who you feature in your book. I think having a diverse voices in your examples. Make sure you don't have any dominant groups which can incite bias, I think is really important when you're trying to make sure things are legitimate. I think Marcelo already cited a very good example in our discussion before, where when someone says, oh, this is how I think, this is how I feel, and you kind of go, oh, where are your facts? What is the evidence behind what you're feeling, you know? So I wanted to ask you guys, how have you legitimized your book? What type of resources, what research did you do for your book? Crystal?
For my book, I just included my life's experiences, but I use biblical scriptures as references. And what I love about the biblical scriptures is it doesn't show any partialities to human beings. Okay. And I just felt like it was the thing for me to do because, in my book, I spoke about some of the social issues that happened in 2020. And, because I found myself in some of those categories as far as demographics. And because I overcame by the word of my testimony and the blood of Jesus, then I use the scriptures as, my point of references.
I think that's really good, having a point of reference. So you have a structure and kind of you can go back to your example. It's really important. Yes, Sue?
I wanted to make a statement on my own. I wasn't commenting on hers. Am I butting in?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. What I want to say is that in writing children's books, there is a lot of research you need to do when they're about things like water and air and trees and things like that and how they help our environment. There is a whole lot of research that you need to put in order to legitimize what you're saying. I don't want to send any child or any person in a way they don't understand. So you have to be really clear about your reasons and your I don't know, your writing. You have to be simple and clear and kind to get your point across. Am I going off the point here?
No, you're
Okay.
fine. You're fine.
Okay. Yeah. Like when I write in the Splish Splash Water, I tell them the different things that water is used for, that we couldn't live without water, and make statements about those kind of things that you have to be real sure about what you say.
Yeah. I think especially since you're trying to write like a science book for children, like making sure that everything is factually correct is so important to you. Because your audience are the people who don't know in the first place.
They don't know. And the reason I think it's important for them to learn it at a really young age is so they do know as they're growing, and they can even teach their families. So as far as that goes, I think it's very important to start young. Yes.
Definitely. I think Carl actually had his hand raised. Yes, Carl?
In my book, and each of the stories I tell about what happened to me in various areas, whether it was in court or in a detention facility, in a prison, or with the gangs. I did about 12 years with gangs, and that was my happiest moments, actually. One of the things that I try to point out is, here is what the law is. Here is what the process is. Here's what these various people, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, probation officer, police, this is what they actually do. And this is what the expectations need to be of these people. Because my feeling has been for decades that the vast majority of people will say, well, that wasn't fair, or that, well, how could they possibly do that? They have no idea what these folks do. That's why I want them to read the book, to get some kind of an idea, whether you like what I did and the way I did it or not, you at least understand that that is what I was expected to do. This is what I was supposed to be doing. And this is what's legal, and this is what's not legal. In the academy, in the first classes, I used to tell the new people in the academy that fair is just another 4-letter F word. You get rid of something like fair, get rid of justice, and think about what is possible and what is not possible, and why not. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Carl. And I think just what you said about testimonies and just looking at the law at that point in time, I think is also really powerful when you have a book like yours where you're actually speaking about your experience. Reverend Michael, yes?
Staying relatively quiet because I've so enjoyed listening to everybody else speak. But when you write a historical fiction, you have to do a lot of research because you're taking a fictional character and you're putting him into an historical context. So you have to understand the history, and you also have to understand the type of setting you're bringing this historical person into. For example, Lucius is a Roman soldier. So you have to understand Roman soldiers. You have to understand how they're trained, how they fight, how they think, how they're commanded. You have to come to understand all those things. Otherwise, your characters won't be credible. And when you try to inject them into an historical context, it will be forced and it won't be a smooth entry. So study is extremely important, and to have research done is extremely important.
And I think it really engages your readers as well, because when everything is accurate, especially, let's say, for example, for Lucius, who's in the Roman Empire, it draws the readers in, where you kind of go, oh, so that's how the Roman Empire was like thousands of years ago. And if everything you've written down, which I'm sure it is historically accurate, then it engages the readers even more. We're like, oh, I'm actually learning something while I'm reading a fiction book, something like that. So I think it really legitimizes your history. All right. So actually, the next point is also related. So it was, we can legitimize things, and next we can document things. I think documenting your own experience as a message to the world is really important, because 50 years from now, society might be very, very different. And recording how it is, like how your experience is right now, is actually so powerful. I think Linda had her hand raised. If you'd like to say something, Linda.
Yes, it seems as if Crystal and I are kindred spirits, because my book is about my life, and throughout it, I quoted Holy Scriptures. And my husband is also featured in my book, Roy, and he is a veteran of the Air Force, Army, Navy, and Marines. And during the period when he enlisted, they allowed him to go from branch to branch. And he's also a retired police officer. So he can relate to a lot of the people on this panel as well. And I always, I'm sorry, go ahead. Kate.
No, go, Linda. Go, Linda.
Okay. And about social change, I wrote a little about the coronavirus in my book as well, because, you know, my family was touched by it as well. And I am always willing to read good stuff about people who are doing good for others through social changes. And in today's society, it is hard to do, because when you try to stand up for someone, then you may get looked at in a bad way. But anytime someone is for social change, that is a very good thing. And I encourage anyone that's writing about social change to keep doing so, because it is really a great thing, and it helps a whole lot of people who wanted to speak out but are too afraid to do so. So I commend everyone who writes for social change. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I think, especially with your book as well, The Day My Life Changed, you speak about your experience. You're documenting your experience and how you felt and the things that you went through. And I think even if someone reads your book, the things that you're still going through, absolutely. And I think when someone reads your book 50 years from now, sorry.
I said every day of my life is a struggle, because I have multiple disabilities.
Yes. And I think, Linda, like the way that you've recorded how you live with your disabilities will be really important 30 years from now, 50 years from now, when someone reads it, because they're reading about your experience in this particular time, in this particular day and age. Like you mentioned, the coronavirus. I'm sure a lot of us have reflected or thought about, or even have documented and written about the coronavirus. And all of this will actually inform the generations who will hopefully never experience a global pandemic like we have. And so the way that we write like this, the way that we document things like this, can actually inspire social change, because 50 years from now, when people are reading the things that we're writing, they realize, that's how it was different. That's how the people of this time felt. And I think it's very, very powerful.
So it's a
legacy. And legacy, yes. And coming from that, I think the next way that authors can drive social change is to actually redefine what is good. And the number one example I can think of this is poetry. If you think about poetry from 100 years ago, the type of prose that people were writing, it's very, very different from the prose and the poetry that we hear today. Because the way that people think and have defined what poetry is has changed. You don't have to strictly state a number of syllables, number of stanzas. It's now changed, and that goes for writing as well. So what have you changed, or what have you redefined in your book, where you've actually gone, this is not how it's usually done, but I want to take the courage to do this in my book?
Yes.
Marcelo, let's go.
Speaking of poetry, one second.
Oh, thank you so much. So when I started writing my book, one of the things that I want to be doing is making sure that we can actually look at ourselves in the proverbial mirror. It started with myself. because we all have a bias that is normal. Now, is this bias going to actually be exploited in some way that somebody can actually take advantage of me? So what I wanted to actually create is be able to see, do I have a blind spot? And now I know that that blind spot exists, so I can actually bring it all together. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, and Carmen as well. You had your hand raised.
Yes, with my book, it's actually, as I mentioned, an acronym. So Warrior Stance is actually an acronym, and there are principles that you can apply to your life. And the way I look at it is, excuse me, once you combine each of these principles, you gain your warrior stance. It gives you the strength. And it's not just for us as adults. The young ones can read this. The young ones, especially with the way society is right now, they need to have that model, that warrior stance. When they combine everything, they can go and stand. They can deal with bullying. They can deal with cyberbullying. They can deal with harassment, with whatever it is that they're dealing with in life. We deal with these things all the time: discrimination, racism. Once you gain that warrior stance, it just strengthens you. So everything I have in my book are things that I've dealt with. We talk about wisdom. I talk about being the authority of the things that you deal with. I talk about learning how to set goals, how to set targets so you can move forward in your life and not be at a standstill, So I teach you about creating networks. So all of these things are great for us as adults. However, when you plant that foundation in the youth right now, can you imagine how they will be in the future when they have a stance already, when they have some foundations, some great foundations established now? How is that going to impact them as well as their generations, the parents, everybody around them? We're all affected by everybody that's around us. So it's not something that we're used to seeing. We're used to just seeing books. But when you have this, even though it's not in a poetry type format, it's still in a format that they can walk away and be like, yeah, I got my warrior stance. Yeah, I combated that. I got my warrior stance and just feel proud. And so it's important to have that as well. Absolutely.
I think the way you've written your book, it was one of the most interesting things I've heard in a while, where you actually had an acronym for every letter, and then work like activities for every letter in your acronym as well, right? So I think that's actually perfect. A redefinition of how to write a book, I think, is really, really amazing. Just a time check, we actually only have about 10 to 15 minutes left. So I'd like to move on to the next one, but don't worry, Carl, definitely the next one. I think this one is really, really amazing. We can make meaningful, visible choices in the way that you write your book. I think when you buy or read books, or you curate your social media, you speak on panels and events, like, these are the choices that you make, and the choice of your message, I think, is also really important. And with these choices, you kind of, sometimes you either validate status quo or you go against status quo. And these are all choices that you make when you write your book. So I think it's really amazing how in your books, you've made the choice to write this topic. You've made the choice that this is what you want to speak about, no matter if it'll piss people off, who knows? If it'll inspire people, who knows? But that's the choice that you've made when you've chosen this topic. So what was the hardest choice that you had to make choosing a topic for your book? Yes, Carl.
I'm going to interrupt just very quickly. I'm sorry. I have to say goodbye to everyone, because even though I have to leave to go to work, I teach Tai Chi at a major treatment center, and so I must go. So, it was wonderful seeing every one of you. Your books are just inspiring to me. So I'm leaving it.
Thank you, Shirley.
And I will say that I'm proud to say I was the one to introduce.
Because I have to go to my live session.
Bye
I
as
must
well,
say
Linda.
goodbye because I have to go to my live session.
Bye,
Y'all
Linda.
be blessed, okay?
Thank you, Linda.
Okay.
Leave the studio. You're welcome. Thank you, Caitlin. Bye.
Am I on?
Yes, Carl, go
Okay.
ahead. So what choice did you make?
Well, as a matter of fact, partly goes back to the thing we just left. I want to validate what Carmen said about the warrior stance. Believe it or not, I'm a 7th degree black belt. I'm a master in Kenpo and Kung Fu and Tai Chi Chuan. And we have several juvenile detention facilities in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And I write about this in my book. I introduced the art of Tai Chi to the kids in detention and showed them that the warrior's way is the way of peace, is the way of self-control and controlling the area that you're around, and how important that was to so many of those kids. I can't tell you how many not one of the people that I was teaching this art to got into any trouble in detention at all. Not one. And it started off with my colleagues saying, oh my God, he's going to teach these kids how to kill us. No, that's not what a martial artist does. A martial artist promotes peace and control. So thank you, Carmen.
Thank you, Carl, as well. I think your colleagues must have been debating your choice to teach these kids how to do martial arts. It's not a normal thought process teaching, if I'd like to say, delinquents, kung fu and tai chi and things like that. It's not a popular choice, but you made that choice, didn't you, Carl? And it worked out really well.
It's one of the things that led to me being asked to create a juvenile detention officers academy. The other detention officers ultimately were saying, hey, we want to learn that. So I taught them.
Amazing. Does anyone else want to say something? Because then we can move on to our next one. Yes, Leroy.
I'm going to just say choosing my title wasn't all that difficult because I was addressing the insanity that is going on in our country at all levels. And so choosing that title was easy. But, to the points we were talking about earlier, there were a lot of periods within the book where I had to decide, was I going to be truthful and say it the way it was, or was I going to try to brush it over? And I chose to tell it like it is, because Excellent. I believe people who read it will learn about. What I do is I've studied the Constitution to a large degree, and everything I write about, I reference the Constitution and the laws that have been written by Congress based on the Constitution. And I quote a lot of our founding fathers in statements they made about the Constitution and what their intent was. And for Carl, not only are we Marines, I'm a 3rd degree black belt in Taekwondo and nationally certified instructor.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And I got the bumps and bruises to prove it.
As do I.
It's marks of effort, I think.
Yeah.
You don't get anywhere without getting some bumps and bruises.
True.
But I did like Carl when I instructed. I was instructing young kids, and the theme of my instructions was patience, understanding, learning to get along, and definitely learning that martial arts is not something to go out and hurt somebody. Mm-hmm. It's something to help you learn discipline.
Yes.
So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Leroy. And I think like as human beings, like as we go throughout our days, we make choices every day. There's even something called decision fatigue when you're just making so many choices every day. But I think when you guys wrote your books, you made a choice about the title, you made a choice about the topic, you made a choice about the language, and the tone that you use in your book. And these choices actually come together to really make your book and to really convey your message. And just from the titles of your book, I can tell, I think you guys did an amazing job choosing the titles of your book.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next thing is actually holding attention. So it's another tool for social change, to hold attention, which is why I brought up the topic of your titles, because a title like American Insanity, Badge 411, Your Warrior Stance, Splish Splash, things like this, they hold your attention. You know, you go, what is that? What is that? Yes, Reverend Michael. Sorry, you're just muted.
As I'm
There we go.
listening, a lot of the folks are talking about truth. And I like that. My book is a man's search for the truth, too. In our present age, this present time in which we live, we've been selling people this bill of goods, this bill of relativism, basically that where people are saying truth is whatever you think it is. There is no absolute truth. Whatever you think, that's how it is. So if you want to run the red light, go ahead and run it, because even though the truth is the red light means stop and the law says you have to, if you don't want to, you shouldn't have to, because that's your truth. There is such a thing as absolute truth. And I've enjoyed listening to these folks talk about truth and express truth, because Taekwondo, I had a brother-in-law, he's a 7th degree master at Taekwondo, and he teaches it. But he says, now, you know, we teach these kids, you can't use this as an offensive weapon. And it's a truth that they instill in these kids. But what if somebody goes around saying, well, my truth is, I think since I know all this stuff, I should be able to be the baddest guy on the block. You know, well, that might be his truth, but that is not the truth behind why a person learns to use that art form.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm appreciative of everybody expressing the truths that they've expressed in their books. It inspires me, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Reverend Michael. Sue? Sorry, you're just muted, Sue?
Yes? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think that that's a good point. And also, once you learn an art like that, you're considered a weapon. And if you get in trouble for using your weapon, they can throw the law at you because it's a weapon. I think, don't you have to sign papers for that? When you get to be that high up as seventh level or whatever. I think isn't that one of the things that they teach you too? Don't use it as a weapon to hurt people, because it's considered like a knife or a gun or whatever. You can hurt somebody just as badly with those talents. Am I right?
Thank you. Yes. Yes, Carmen?
And that's absolutely right. And you know, I love the topic of speaking on the truth. Even in my book, Your Warrior Stance, I speak specifically about how important it is for us to establish wisdom and to learn how to use that wisdom. A lot of people look at, you know, having knowledge and having, you know, information, but how do you use what you have? That's what's most important, how to establish the right networks to get you to where you need to go, how to set goals. Our youth, they're not learning that. Sometimes, even as adulthood, we don't even realize how important those, principles are to us. So, just understanding the truth, these are the truths, and when you look at my book, it has a sword and a shield on there because we're constantly fighting. We're fighting life. We're fighting through the truth. We're trying to get people to understand the truth and what's right and what's wrong, not necessarily, just because we want to, but it's almost like an ethic thing. But we also have to realize that everybody's truth is different based on their environment, right? Based on their perception of things, based on their experiences. So just because what's true to me doesn't mean that that's what's true to someone else. Now, biblically, of course, but you still have people who kind of are concerned about what's truth even in the Bible. But truth basically comes with our experiences and our perception of life, and that's how we individually look at what's true, because that's all we know. But it's important to find that truth and walk in truth no matter what.
Thank you. Deacon Tanya?
I actually wanted to respond to Carmen on that. What she talked about at first was about our children aren't learning that, and that's very important. Which is why my title is "Found in the Garbage Can: Generation X to Generation Next," because I was that Generation X, and my children weren't that generation. That was the Millennium generation, but I was very concerned at what they were learning. Like, they've taken so many things out of schools, and they've taken a lot of books out of schools. Do you know that? They've taken a lot of books, and mostly textbooks. And this is important for our future. Like Carmen was saying, the kids aren't learning that. And that really concerns me. I wrote another book called Without Souls, Missing Children, The Gift of God. I wrote that book because of all the youngsters, the young ones that grew up with me. Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston. These people died because of I think, not knowing the truth about God. That's what I think. And that's why I say the gift of God. And a lot more. I have a lot more in that book. But it's supposed to be for the awareness. Help our children be aware of where we're going. It's not only about politics. It's not only about war. It's not even only about God. It is definitely the ultimate about God, but it's not even only about that. But like you said about books and just being a world and wealth of information and stuff, we have to get kids back to reading, because they're not doing that, and it's only because our society is not doing that.
Thank you, Deacon Tanya. And I think that's a perfect segue to our last 2 points, actually. I'm just checking the time, and we're actually run a little bit over time. Apologies for that. But I will say that the last 2 ways to really incite social change is to amplify others and to mobilize others. And I think what Deacon Tanya was saying about our children, and that's something that you can amplify in your message, that you bring it up. Children need to read more. Children actually are lacking a lot of education in certain areas compared to how it was maybe 50 years ago. And they're learning different things. So amplifying that and amplifying that issue is very, very powerful. Exactly like how Deacon Tanya just amplified that. Or allowing marginalized or oppressed groups to speak through your work. That's an amplification of them. And I think that's also really, really important. Like Marcelo's book about propaganda, you don't usually think about the people who are doing bad things, but they're good people. But it just might be the things that people have said around them or have incited them. Like, amplifying this message is really, really important. So then you can mobilize, actually create change. I think, Carmen, perfect example. You have your coaching your life as a life coach. You actually mobilize people to change, through your book and through your work, right? So I think let's just have one last, because I think we've run quite a bit over time. Everyone just has so much to say, and I love listening to everyone. It's been so, so good. So how can you mobilize people to actually change through your book? Let's go, Carmen.
I'll jump on now. Y'all know I'll talk. Come on now. Look, it's the warrior stance. Okay. How can you not be mobilized? How can you not be motivated to create your warrior stance, to build strength, to have your shield and your sword and fighting life and learning how to create this whole person? How can you not be mobilized? How can you not want to be a better person so you could teach your generations, teach your children, teach everybody who's around you? Because when we're a better person, guess what? Everybody that we touch are going to be better people. So all we do is mobilize everybody that's around us. If I wasn't as strong and powerful and, have all of my military background, I would have a whole different presence. And that whole different presence is infectious. So I know that me being as strong as I am, that's infectious, and that's going to just make that next person strong. And I've noticed that even at the book fair, where so many people felt strong just communicating with me, just talking, just asking questions, it just gave them a whole different presence. So you have to mobilize. We have too much information, knowledge, presence about ourselves to hold it on to ourselves. Our job is to go out and spread love, to help others grow. That's what we should be doing. So get out there and mobilize. Look, I know the Marines are, so what about the rest of y'all?
Thank you. Leroy, yes?
Navy.
In mobilizing, it's part of my book. I don't just talk about, all the insanity that's going on within our country and society. I have a couple of chapters in which I actually talk about solutions, some real solutions, how people can get involved and must get involved in order to bring our country back to a constitutional republic like it was intended to be. So if the reader goes through, I'm sure, in the first numerous chapters, you're going to wonder, well, what am I going to do about it? I do at the end, say, okay, here's what you can do. Here's what we can do. Here's what we as a community and as a nation can do. But we got to do it. We got to get out of our comfort zones. We got to get off our back ends, and we got to do it.
Absolutely. Can we have one last one, just because we're actually running at 1 hour and 10 minutes now? Can we do Crystal?
Okay. I was just gonna say, one of the ways I mobilize, and I spoke about it in my book, about how God, and when God, I think it was during 2020, when He told me to start my movement-based business, which is called Pure Hearts. And what Pure Hearts is it's a movement that God told me to start on social media. And so I just have my website and my social media pages where, I go live and I do Bible teachings. I share my testimonies, and, I give words of encouragement. And so, and that's all for now, but I believe it's going to be bigger than what it is. But, the Bible says never despise small beginnings.
Yes.
And so, yeah.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I before we finish up, I'd just like to give Helen the stage as well. She wasn't able to introduce her book at the start. So hello, Helen. If you'd like to speak about your book.
I would like to speak about who I am, what I do. I'm an African American storyteller, and I travel cross country 3 months out of a year, talking to people about their lives and what they're doing, because every day is the social change for them. Sometimes you recognize it, and sometimes you don't recognize it. I'm on the advisory board of the African American Writers Alliance. It's an international organization, and we give space for African American writers to write in the lenses of how they see the world, and make a space where we can acknowledge ourselves as writers and be listened and heard. And many times, the only time our writings is accepted is when we're writing something that makes others comfortable. I'm not a writer who makes you comfortable. My book, The Unexpected, here that I have written, I don't know if you can see it, but she was asking something about books that catch your attention. The books that I write catch your attention. I wrote a book that took me 31 years. It's turned into a trilogy. I have actually written 9 books, and this book turned into a trilogy called the Miss Anna, the Promise Keeper, and The Two Worlds of Miss Anna, and Miss Anna, and The Tears from the Healing Tree. We are the gatekeepers as writers. What we give the reader is something that they may not have even thought about or may not ever know unless there's those of us who alert them what is going on around them. Because a lot of times we're all stuck in a cave, and the writer is the one who helps us dig ourselves out, give meaning to life and the things that we need to know as writers, and how we participate in streamlining the things that is going on around us that we're not privileged to, otherwise are privileged to. So remember, as gatekeepers, it is our duty and our responsibility to keep abreast of what's going on and allow those around us to be made aware. I thank you all. I have enjoyed listening to you, and those of you who are African Americans who would like to be a part of the African Americans Alliance, their group is based out of Seattle, Washington, and we would enjoy having you. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This has been such an amazing roundtable. We've gone overtime by like 15 minutes because I really didn't want to cut anyone from what they were saying. And I apologize because there's so many of us. You might not have been able to speak every single time you wanted to speak. So apologies for that. But even just listening to everyone has been really, really inspiring. And I think everyone here uses writing as a tool for social change. And just, I think you definitely have put your message out to the world. And at least the people here listening online on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter as well, we've received the message. We've received the message that you guys are all trying to say and all trying to send out to the world. So thank you so much for joining our roundtable session. This is the Festival of Storytellers. This is our 5th Festival of Storytellers. And it's been really, really amazing. We have more Author of the R sessions and also other roundtable sessions. You can still sign up for them, I think. But thank you so much for all of your insights. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for just everything that you've brought to this roundtable session, because I feel like it's enriched me as a person and it's inspired me as a person. And I hope it's the same for you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin. Wait, that was crazy.
Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.